Monday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Kurt Johansson Show, bringing another exclusive interview. This time, he is the shooter, Ian Skinner. Ian, thank you for coming on.
Pew pew. Thanks very much for having me.
It's been I'm
glad to be on.
Now, it's been a long time coming. Like, we've been chatting just back and forth about random stuff during COVID, and build somewhat of a friendship, I guess. Just speaking about different things with D&D, and you're somebody that's very active on Twitter in terms of the wrestling community as well, like trying to promote a lot of other people, trying to promote different companies. Why is that? Like, some people just kind of stick to what they're involved with, but you seem very vocal. Like, for example, Wrestle Carnival, you've been promoting what they've been doing. You've been retweeting my content that you're not even involved in. Like, why is that your approach when it's not everybody's approach?
I think when it comes to social media, some people think of social media as kind of like they've got their Bebo, you know, they've got their kind of like, this is my own personal space, and I'm going to share the stuff that I like. But social media is like, it's a great tool in which you can help kind of like signal boost. Now you can do like signal boost for like amazing causes, but you can also signal boost for kind of like Gary Wrestle Carnival. Like, he was promoting kind of like little, like, while he was, you know, he went through a bit of a rough patch there. So he was doing these graphics, and I was like, oh, the graphics for £10? Hell yeah. And he was able to get them done like quick turnover. They looked amazing. I put them up, and I'm like, well, may as well help him out, you know. Like, he's done me a solid, I'll do him a solid. And especially when you see content that you like from these kind of like promotions and all these different things, you're like, okay, let's share that, let's signal boost that to the people who will be watching on my timeline, because I don't have anything interesting to say at the moment. I do have some...
Dude, you can't say you've got nothing interesting to say at the start of an interview. Like, everyone's going to... Don't switch off. He has got interesting stuff to say.
Yeah. No, trust me, I'm always like the oxymoron. I'm like, I've got nothing interesting to say, but let me tell you about this time I was on Britain's Got Talent.
Was you actually on Britain's Got Talent?
I was, yeah.
Take it away.
But you'll have to wait around to hear about that story, guys.
I like it. So, what have you been doing, apart from plugging your Britain's Got Talent appearance? What have you been doing during COVID?
So since before like the lockdown actually happened, I got real close with a group of friends who were like nearby my area. Like, we'd fallen kind of like by the wayside. Like, some of them were still at university, some of them have moved on to jobs, and then we all just kind of came back together. It's like, okay, cool, I'm off work, you guys aren't doing as much work, we live like 5 minutes away from each other, let's have a drink, do some board games. And then they're like, oh, this guy's doing a D&D campaign right now, do you want to do it? I'm like, amazing. So I started joining in on D&D, which I hadn't played for ages since since I started university. As well as on the side, I've been doing like home workouts. There's only so many push-ups and sit-ups you can really do before you just go absolutely mental. Doing a lot of running about as if I'm just like a kid in a playground, like, hey, running about Edinburgh, catching up on like what the coolest things on Netflix are and YouTube series. And I love film theory. I'm a theatre and film student, graduated amazingly.
Oh, brilliant. I'll have to put you in touch with one of my friends, Nathan Major. He does like film reviewing, he does podcasting as well. He's a big wrestling fan. So yeah, after this, we'll have to put you in touch with him, and hopefully you can do some work with him.
That'd be sick.
Look at that, guys. Networking, help each other. What have you been watching?
So recently I've been rewatching The Thing and The Shining. because there was a film that I watched the Blair Witch Project at the start of lockdown because I heard an interesting theory about it that if you look at it through the lens rather than like a supernatural, the witches come together, if you look at it from the perspective of the two guys are trying to kill the woman and they're trying to make her go insane, like the whole like juggling about the map and the compass always going north and they're trapped in the woods, but it feels like they've seen stuff before. If the guys are guiding that journey and she's just following along, they're just gaslighting her to get her to that mental space. And it definitely changed the narrative of Blair Witch.
Yeah, hearing you speak like that, I'll have to definitely put you in touch with Nathan. He'll review all the new stuff. He'll look at some of the older stuff, obviously, with cinemas not producing new stuff. So you mentioned D&D, and again, that's something that we've been chatting with. I kind of put it out there that I was doing my first ever like campaign, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, but I never thought I had the group of friends to do it. And then when I told a few of like my oldest friends, for example, Nathan, he was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that." And then another person that was in mine and Nathan's friendship, "Oh yeah, I've always wanted to do that." I'm just like, we've known each other for years. Like, why has this never come up? But nah, so I've started that. Like, what is it about D&D that you like?
So I love the storytelling. I'm a like sometimes like I'll say that a lot of the things that I say that I do, it's a very kind of sometimes I'll do this. So I sometimes am an improv / sketch / stand-up comedian.
Okay.
And improv is just like, I'm sure you've watched Whose Lines It Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's like at least like watched one episode or one clip that they've seen on Facebook. But Whose Lines It Anyway was like such a big childhood placeholder for me, and I love the improv style of storytelling.
Yeah.
And D&D gives the kind of like the opportunity to not only kind of like, okay, cool, here's a situation, here's what you're doing, go.
Yeah.
With a bit of kind of like maybe like push in some directions and push in other directions. But it's one of the things that kind of kept me around this group. So we started right before lockdown and we're still going. We've been doing it like weekly, so bi-weekly. We're probably like in campaign 2, season 2, like episode 10. Like, and like that. It's kind of like wrestling. After a certain point, the storytelling has to keep going. You can't go, well, we finished this, so that's the end of it, and not continue. You have to go, no, cool, what happens after that? Yeah. What happens after Finn Balor beats AJ Styles? What happens after Karrion Kross destroys Tommaso Ciampa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And guys, that is something we do delve into a little bit more. We won't do it in this one. Again, this is the interview with Ian Skinner. We're learning about Ian, but Ian's also going to be my testimony with my new series, which I call D&DUB. D&DUB. Very proud of that name. Was like, right, should it be D&W or should it be just D&D? But yeah, D&DUB, Dungeons and Wrestling. I'm going to try and merge the two worlds together. Like, I've not really seen much apart from Brandon Cutler in AEW. He's somebody that very vocal and visually, yep, he's a D&D fan. So we're going to try and do a few different twists. And again, Ian's my testimony with the structure. So make sure you hit subscribe now. Make sure you don't miss D&DUB for when that comes out, which will probably be a few days after this one. So anyways, what's it been like not being in the ring during all this period then?
At first, it was extremely hard. So I don't live around a bunch of wrestlers. Okay. Like I travel in for my training and travel away. So there's a lot of kind of like itching and kind of like that kind of passion inside where I'm just like hanging out with my mates. I'm just like, give me a wrist. Let me just try something. Especially when you watch it so much as well. So like you'll see something new, and obviously you'll be always looking to watch something new to kind of keep you engaged. And then you see something new, and then you're like, oh, I want to try that. Just give me a mat. Give me some grass. You know, I'll just do anything. It's been like, luckily enough, I think the actual kind of not the itch has subsided, but the kind of nuisance, or at least for kind of like the voice in the back of my head. It's like, do it, do it, do it. I've been able to kind of pull that down at least for some time. But I'm just excited to. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I can't wait to take that first bump. But I can't wait to take that first bump. I can't wait to grab someone's wrist and pull them down into a front guillotine and then roll them over, give them a pin, get them out, and get that kind of like that. I don't think it's the actual wrestling, but it's the moments between wrestling that I'm looking forward to kind of feeling again.
Yeah. So how did you get started? Like, again, it's not just one day wake up, I want to be just like suplexed and thrown around the ring. Like, when was the first passion of wrestling came to be, and when did you think, actually, I'm going to try and make this a career?
So my first kind of like memory of wrestling that I have, it's so funny because everyone talks about their first memory of wrestling and they've got these cool memories. They're like, oh, I remember when Chris Jericho debuted, or I remember Shawn Michaels super kicking Vince McMahon. I remember Stone Cold hit the stunner. My first wrestling memory that I can conceivably remember is a match where it's Bubba Ray Dudley versus Tajiri, and they're both dressed as Santa. It was like I have an older sister, and her mates would like wrestling. So Saturday mornings, Sky One, there was always like, it was not Sunday Night Heat, but there was like a wrestling show that would like wrap everything up, and you'd get little glimpses of matches here and there. And for some reason, seeing Tajiri and Bubba Ray Dudley was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And then I've been a fan ever since then. I did kind of fall away from it in high school, because all girls, all Slipknot, all like a lot of other passions came out there. But then when I was like 17 or 18, it must have been 18 because it was an over 18 show. My friend, I was visiting him, and he's like, "Oh, I've got spare tickets for a show tomorrow. Do you want to stay an extra day and you can come to the show with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure thing." And it was ICW at the O2 Academy, and just seeing that show and being in that atmosphere, and we were right at in front of the barriers. Yeah, the action was just palpable, and I was like, I need to do this when I can. I'm gonna learn how to wrestle. There's a point where Kaylee Ray like jumped onto a barrier. She did like the AJ Styles, jumped to a group of guys, and then I'm there holding the barrier, just like right next to her, and I'm just in awe. I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. And it's the same night that Drew McIntyre returned from WWE originally.
Oh, fucking hell. That atmosphere was absolutely ridiculous. I remember watching it. Like, even when I watch back, still the goosebumps, just because the place erupts, and that promo as well was just absolutely outstanding. But what was your experience being there live for that McIntyre? Because it was essentially the birth of McIntyre is how we know him today.
Yeah, which is funny because it's weird looking back on like that's my first kind of like adult wrestling memory, and now look at him now and he's the WWE champion. It literally feels like a story arc. Yeah. But I can't explain it because I think I wasn't super in the know back then. I kind of like, I'd get the little bits of info, little like trickles of like, oh, this guy's really cool, or this guy used to do this, or this guy was, here and that. I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. But coming back, I knew that there was an expectation, like everyone was talking about it. There's the expectation that, oh, the guy from a three-man band was Scottish, and he was actually like the first champion. I'm like, oh, cool. And then the lights go off. And like literally everyone's like, oh, Drew, oh my god, and I'm like, oh my god, oh fuck. And then next thing you know, this big fucking, oh sorry, am I allowed to swear? Yeah. This big like 6'7" lad standing in the middle of a ring with a hoodie. He takes the hood off, and then just the place goes absolutely berserk. Yeah. And I don't know if I just felt numb or if I was just so overstimulated, but I was like in awe of the situation.
So do you think was it the Kaylee Ray like dive, or do you think that moment with Drew McIntyre to see everybody just forget everything else around them and just get so captivated, is that the moment where you thought, yep?
it was definitely Kaylee Ray's like dive on the barrier because I was just so close to the action.
Oh, nice barrier! I want to jump off that too.
Yeah, and obviously I still have like lingering memories of like when AJ Styles used to do that all the time in TNA. Because like TNA used to be on the wrestling channel, so when I wasn't watching WWE, I'd be watching TNA and Ring of Honor. So I just remember like AJ Styles doing that. I'm like, oh, yo, this is so cool. Because I think there was just a lot going on, and it was just like you were right next to the punches, you were right next to the action. Like Drew McIntyre, I think that's maybe the moment that I was like, oh. But the moment I knew that I was like, cool, I need to do this, was that dive.
Nice. And again, you mentioned Drew being WWE champion, but look at Kaylee Ray. I know COVID's stumped a lot of the stuff for NXT UK, but the work she's done there since debuting on the show has been absolutely brilliant. I was there for the I Quit match with Toni Storm in York, I think it was. That was, again, absolutely brilliant. And she's one of like the trinity of what was the British wrestling scene, especially in the women's scene, in Viper, Toni Storm, and Kaylee Ray. Is Kaylee one of the topics that's been going around on, again, wrestling Twitter? What's your thoughts on intergender wrestling? Like, if I was to say, right, here's Kaylee Ray or Emily Hayden, like, I'm booking you against them. How do you feel with that?
I think a lot of this, especially it's something that I've heard from Kaylee through Emily Hayden's mouth, and she'd always talk about it, is Emily Hayden would always say, like, if you're in a match with Kaylee, don't hold your punches because she will batter you. She'll batter you even harder if you hold your punches. It's something that's kind of like a culture, or at least like when I've been at seminars. I once did a seminar with Mike Bailey, and I was working with Raven Creed and Amy Alonze in a match. And what I was told before a match is, you guys aren't boys and girls. You're not men and women. You're all wrestlers. There's no wrestlers and wrestlettes. You're all wrestlers. So treat each other like wrestlers. And I think intergender wrestling can be done in such a way, like, it doesn't have to be kind of like the big bad guy man versus the scrappy underdog. You know, it can happen. You know, you can have your Candice LeRae versus Trent Beretta at Mystery Vortex, which is amazing. But you can also have kind of like, I don't know if you know Liu King Sharp. Yeah, you can have Liu King Sharp versus Viper. And the whole thing is he's like the old scrappy dude, like, let me at him. And she just like picks him up and then slams him on the ground. And he's trying to get up and he's like, oh, you're a lassie. You can't do that to me. And then he keeps going, but he just keeps getting knocked down. There's so many different dynamics that like wrestling is a variety show. Yeah. I think that there are some audiences, like Andy Wilde shared a story in which he was doing a tag match, and he was getting beaten down by a female wrestler. And there's a point where he was like trying to fight back up, and he hit her with one, and the crowd immediately turned on him as a good guy. So I think you need to be kind of like spotty and picky and choosy with maybe one, how you present that, but secondly, like, what is the environment that you're doing it in? Because I think there are some people who may be a bit more sensitive. Like, I think a family show, maybe not the best place for an intergender match, because it's going to be kids and mums and dads who don't watch wrestling, and they're going to be like, why is the guy hitting the lassie? I know she's been a bit of a bitch, but you know, you don't just like scalp a woman.
No, were you mentioning like Viper and like the contrast? I think even to some extent that happens in women's wrestling or just men's wrestling. I was speaking to Tommy Dreamer at All In, like me and the two lads from Ringsiders, when we was doing Ringsiders, we flew out to All In and was just having a chat with Tommy Dreamer that was just telling us some great stories. And one of them was, I think it was a case of he was either working, it was either to do with like Mark Henry or Brock Lesnar, and it was either he was told you can't pick them up. What are you doing picking them up in a match? And he was like, that's not believable. Why is it not believable? I've just managed to pick him up. And it was one where he was kind of annoyed, like, no, like, somebody like you can't pick that person up. And he was like, but I just have. Like, what's more believable than me actually doing it? And I think it is just, as again, with the storytelling. I think Wrestle Island, they've just mentioned it, with there isn't any intergender wrestling, it's just wrestling. Like, regardless of your gender, you're in the ring, go and make magic.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what was your first training experience like then?
So, I wouldn't say I've got kind of like a very skewed kind of like wrestling training wasn't my first kind of like regimented training like that. I used to do jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing with SBG Murray up north.
Right,
So
you're just showing off now. So you've done all that. You've been on Britain's Got Talent. You've done film studies. Anything else?
So I did a fringe show. I've got the set list right here. I could rattle off. No way. I'll get. We'll come back to that, or we might not. That's the exciting thing about Ian Skinner. You never know where he's gonna go. But I used to do jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing. I wasn't like anything worth it. It was my first time doing it, but I did it for like a couple years when I was living up north. So like going into a wrestling environment, I was thinking, okay, this is gonna be the same but different. One thing I was really worried about was I used to listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts and like shoot interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd be worried about was like, okay, is there going to be hazing? If there's going to be hazing, I just kind of need to go with the flow or assert my dominance. But I went in and then there's TJ Rage there. I was like, all right, bro, everyone shake hands with him. Do you want to take part today? I think Emily Hayden was saying that she didn't want to take part in the first one. But I was there. I had like some like basic gym stuff on. I was like, yeah, sure. He was like, oh, cool. And then like we did our warm up, and then he was teaching me some of the basics, and he's like, have you trained before? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, all right. Like I always used to be compared to because I was used to training more physical style.
Yeah.
The guy like Krieger, he always used to say that, okay, with wrestling, you're an erection. What you need to be is a semi. It looks good, but it looks hard.
That's one analogy. Yeah, that's one way to describe it. So when you've been told not to be quite hard, but at least be semi, and you've been going back, like how long was your training before you made your debut?
So I was very on and off with training at the start. So I started training September 2015, and I made my debut in December 2017. Now that's not a slight on me. I'm not that bad. But I did have sprees in which like I'd get wrapped up in projects. So like if I had a fringe show coming up, that means that I couldn't train in July because I had rehearsals, and I couldn't train in August because I'd have the show.
Yeah.
And then September, uni would go back, and I'm like, okay, cool. I need to get my head stuck down for these classes. But I think it was maybe from the start of 2017, or at least like August 2017 onwards, that I was kind of like, cool, I'm going to give this my all. Don't care about kind of like doing stand-up shows. I don't want to progress any further. I can do uni on the side. This is going to be my thing. I want to debut, and I just pushed for it, kept my head down in training, and tried to do as much as I could.
So who was that first match with, and what company?
So that was the Academy Attack. I think Emily Hayden mentioned that like it's kind of like the trainee show. It was against a guy called Logan Smith. And I think at first when I was looked at as a wrestler, people were going, okay, scrappy underdog. Yeah, I think he's little, he's boom, 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 boom. But I think at the time I was still very much wrapped up in my head of being, okay, cool. So I'm going to do an armbar, and then I'm going to transition that, and I'm going to do a go-go platter, and then you pin me after that, and you start hitting me. So then they're like, okay, how about you go in with this guy who's like a big baby face, and you're the heel. And it just kind of worked. I like somehow it just like he brought the best out of me, and especially for people were saying that like for a training match, or at least like a trainee match, if you'd put that in front of a different audience, it might have got a bigger reaction, because we were still doing stuff that was kind of like, okay, cool, you throw this, I catch that, you go over back there, you push me off, I go underneath you. There is at least like one moment where there's a natural kind of like no panto, no kind of Shakespeare. Is the bit where after I've been beating him down for the entire match, I get him with one, and then he gets me with a penalty kick. And the crowd just absolutely erupts, because they're like, oh, he's back on it, he's back on it. It's a great feeling to watch that back.
Yeah, what was your feeling like when you're hearing that crowd for the first time then, and then reacting so positively to a match?
When I'm wrestling, for the most part, sometimes I kind of like tune it out. I'm just focusing like on like, okay, right now I think at the time I was very much kind of like, I know what's coming next, but also part of me is like, cool, I need to like look out to this side. I've just been kicked in the head. I know what's coming next, prepare for it, but I'm still a bad guy. But I think that's a skill that I developed over time, in which it's like I learned to listen more whilst I was in the ring, because a lot of those kind of like those juicy moments of kind of like natural charisma and natural connection come from reacting to something that happens in the audience. Because not only is it kind of like, okay, you're watching TV, you could watch like wrestling all the time on TV, but if you're in an audience and say like you say something funny and the wrestler goes, nice, I like that, I love Wu-Tang Clan, that brings you into it, and then you're engaged, and then you're like, oh, this guy liked my joke, okay, I'm getting back into this.
No, definitely. So when, like, what companies, I know there's been PBW, there's been Source and ICW. Have there been any other companies that you've been working with, like whether it's in England or across Europe?
Unfortunately, I've not. I think I've only traveled to one promotion in England, and that was All Star Wrestling.
Okay.
And that was Berwick. All Star Wrestling is an entirely different beast, because it's like camp shows, so it's not even wrestling fans. It's just families who are like, cool, let's do something fun for the afternoon. So you have to play the panto up a bit more. But I've not had the chance to travel down south. I've been trying to, like, that was one of my goals in 2020 before everything kind of went eerie. I've been trying to like expand my horizons. I'd love to get down to some companies in England. There's so many places doing so many good jobs. I'd love to get to Scandinavia. One of my plans was to go out and train in Germany. I went at the start, just before lockdown. Luckily enough, I got the opportunity to train over in Ireland with Fight Factory. So I'd love to get back over there to not only train with them again, but also, you know, be a part of their show, be a part of their product, because they've pretty much, a lot of the Irish talent are coming out of the Fight Factory. A lot of them. I'm not going to say all of them, because you've got like 2 other schools there. But like LJ, well, more than hype guys, Amy Alonze, Debbie Keitel, Valkyrie. Like,
so many good talent coming through at the moment. And so what's it been like wrestling in Scotland? So like, for those that aren't as familiar, like, what's it been like from, say, working for Source to then working PBW, working for ICW? Because 3 different types of companies, and like trying to explain what those have been like for the fans.
So I think it all comes down to the way that the show is run, and also the product that they're putting out for. So I think working for PBW is very kind of like focused on creating those moments for the kids that have them come back. You know, a kid sees you do like a cool overhead kick, or a cool kind of like, one thing I used to do is like a little Fortnite dance in the middle, and the kids would love that. So having them remember that, so next time you come to that town, they're like, I remember that last show. That was amazing. Mum, can we go again? Let's take all my friends. It's one of the things that was happening in Pro Wrestling Scotland, which is one of the companies run by TJ Rage. we went out to like a really small town. I don't think they've had much wrestling, but I think the way that the kids reacted to it was just like unreal. They loved the kind of like the theatrics of it. Source, the way that it's been running the last couple years is a bit more very physical. I think that's the way that they're kind of like their trainees kind of like they build themselves. I've done a lot. I got work through Source because I used to attend a lot of their seminars. I went to see Mike Bailey there, Atsushi Aoki, my boy. Loved his burgers. Aoki-san, strong heart, makes a strong wrestler. That's always what I remember him for. So, and I think I was picked up because I was very much ingrained in the kind of like the physicality. And I think ICW, I was kind of, the way I got through to ICW was we were looking at the academy and kind of like, okay, who in the academy is kind of like ready for an opportunity, or like who can I work with in this opportunity? Well, for this show, it was ICW Gonzo, and it was like there was 3 of us who were picked. It was me, Dean Ford, and Darren Bice, and I think we all brought something very different to the table. I'm still unsure of what I was bringing to the table. I'm very kind of like not self-aware, but I'm told it's because I'm a mentalist and I believe everything I do. Yeah. But I was given the feedback that I'm not going to say it. Okay, I need to say it now because I said that I'm not going to say it. I was given the feedback that I was one of the best wrestlers in that room, which I don't believe at the time. I don't believe. But I think there's some merit to that because I got that opportunity based off of that. And I'm not kind of like saying that this was said on the sly. This was said in front of the entire group of people. And I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I'm also still very like, what is it? What is my secret? I don't know.
Nah, you should take that like compliment and be proud of getting something like that. Obviously, I mentioned them earlier with Wrestle Island. They're doing the prospects thing where they've got 10 Wrestle Island prospects and then they've got 10 new prospects, and you'd been one person that kept getting mentioned from I think it was Scottish Wrestling Network. They'd mentioned you, and again, it's that hard-hitting style, and you do seem to be that typical. I wouldn't say typical, because I think that can put a down, but you are, it seems like the embodiment of what a British wrestler is, with the technical, like if you look at what Gabriel Kidd's doing as a young lion in New Japan.
Oh, I don't know if you can see this, but I've got a picture of Shibata up there.
Before we recorded, you blared out your background so nobody can see that.
Right. So I've got a picture of Shibata in my background that my mate drew for me, and also one of my tattoos.
That is amazing.
Is because he's one of the guys who, like, as soon as I saw him wrestle against Ishii, I was like watching for AJ Styles and Nakamura, didn't know anything about New Japan, but as soon as him and Ishii just like bandied together and started just beating the absolute crap out of each other, I was hooked. Yeah. That was the moment that I was kind of like, okay, I'm in not just love, I want to marry wrestling, okay? I want to grow old with wrestling, I want to have like 6 kids with them, have a dog, live out on a farm with a white picket fence, and not Last of Us it.
Yeah, let's hope not Last of Us.
So like, hearing that, like what Gabriel Kidd's doing right now in New Japan is amazing. Oh, I love to see everything that he's doing right now. I'm so proud of British wrestling scene for that. Sorry, that I just tangented you.
No, I like it. 'Cause obviously he's transition and stuff, and I've got to speak to him a couple of times at WrestleGate when Gary owned that. And I was actually in the crowd for the Manchester Rev Pro show where Shibata came out and offered Gabriel Kidd that spot to go to LA to train under him, and to see his transition has been fantastic. And you mentioned Shibata, like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I remember, again, this time London, seeing him and Zack Sabre Jr. go at it for the Rev Pro title, and then the night after it was Hero and Shibata, and just those matches were absolutely ridiculous. Like if Shibata was to return, like it was as if it was slightly getting teased with Kenta. Who would you want that Shibata match to be with? If it was just that one final match where it's like, right, still shouldn't really be doing it, but I could get through one match.
Oh, that's a tough one. Like, are you talking like in New Japan or like all over the world?
Give me one for each.
In New Japan, Ishii. But like, if I was like putting that match on, I know it's probably something that shouldn't happen, but I'd want them to go the distance.
Yeah.
Or even like either go the distance or finish it within 6 minutes. Yeah. Because like their first match was 12 minutes, which is kind of like a G1 climax. You're like, what? 12 minutes? Is there more match to go on? They brought the best out of each other because they've got both that kind of like, I'm not going down off of this attitude, which when combined together is even great because like, hit you, I'm not going down, hit you, no, I'm not going down, no you, no you, no you. I'd love to see, if we're talking WWE, Aleister Black versus Shibata. Mainly for the fact that, one, I think that's one of the matches that Aleister Black has always talked about wanting.
Yeah.
And I think they'd be able to bring a good, like not just the kicking, but I'm sure that kind of like the psychology, or even them just like standing across the ring from each other, looking at each other. I think that would be those kind of moments where time stands still and everyone's like, this is awesome.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that because obviously Black trained under Hero for a little bit, and it was kind of those vibes where when we was before they'd even locked you, it was like, we're going to witness something incredible here. Like the night before I mentioned with the Zack Sabre Jr. match, but it was Ishii and Hero as well on the night one, and then it was night two with Hero and Shibata, so it kind of gives those vibes, but it's just, yeah, I want to see that now.
Yeah, and I think if I'm talking about an independent, someone who isn't signed anywhere, Ridgeway.
Yeah, I remember being at a family friendly show and just started chanting hard as fuck.
Oh,
I couldn't help it.
It's because he's got that black belt. You can't ignore the black belt, you know?
Yep. I think it was him and Robbie X, but yeah, I just started chanting hard as fuck, and I was just looking around the room and thought, I should not have said that. I should not have said that. So what's with ICW, like, obviously with the speaking out movement, there's been a lot of people that have been outed and trying to get out of the wrestling scene, and ICW may have been one company that have been a lot quieter in their approach of dealing with this stuff, and hopefully that is something that's changed. But whereas if it's the owners or whoever's decision that was, fair enough, like, I don't want to get into that, but with WWE Network, ICW have just gone on that and trying to find the positives out of the negatives. Again, Progress Wrestling was one where a lot of their talent was mentioned, but there's a lot of their talent in both companies that essentially they've not done anything wrong. They may not have known anything was happening, but now they're getting that opportunity to be on the WWE Network. So what would it feel like when the next set of shows get announced, and what if we see the Shootery and Skinner on the WWE Network?
I wouldn't be able to even fathom that. I think it would kind of like go in line of the kind of like my lacking of self-awareness, because I'd be like, nah, they'll probably skip my match. Like, I'd have to wait and actually see it before, like, even if they said like, okay, we're gonna show this match and this match from these shows, and like they're both like my matches, I'd be like, I'll wait and see. I'll share it right now, but I'll wait and see, because how I imagine it would be, I'd start watching it and then like they just like cut my bit entirely and it'd just be the pin, and it'd be like, oh, that makes sense. I think it'd be an unreal experience, and like for guys like Ravy Davey, being able to see like your match on a show like that. I think it's like Ray Davey versus James Storm. I can't imagine how unreal it is. And like Kez Evans for being one of the first guys in the first match on ICW on the WWE Network. I can't imagine how he's feeling right now. Obviously, I think he talked about, you know, kind of like feeling disheartened from kind of like being in the environment that he is. But I'm sure that is something that's kind of like not brought him back, but like has given him something to kind of like work for or look forward to, and being like, hey, you know, there's something to stick around for, because I think that's something that's maybe happening with a lot of people in Scottish wrestling. They're maybe thinking like, okay, what's there for me to stick around for? What can I add to that? So it's good that there is still something there for people.
It's just a shame they didn't pay Madonna.
Yeah. I like, part of me feels like they should have done like the Super Dragon, where just like the lights go off and the lights come on, and Grado's there, and everyone goes, oh!
I've always said it, like, I'd love for Grado to get that opportunity, and if WWE thought, you know what, we're going to go all out. I know Grado's doing a lot of other stuff away from wrestling now, but when he was at the pinnacle of the biggest babyface in Europe, essentially, I'd always imagine like that WrestleMania moment of Madonna singing live and Grado just dancing around her with everybody going.
If only, yeah.
But what like highlights have you got from your career so far? Like, you're still so young in your career and you're only just getting started, but is there any moments or any matches where you think I'm proud of that one, and that's one that you'll take with you? I
think one of the moments that stuck out to me, and I think it's something I wasn't like there. I heard it, but I was like, I can't react to that. I need to keep going. It was in ICW Gonzo. A lot of the kind of like the latter half of the match is me kind of on fire, and watching that back and like hearing the reaction to everything that I'm like doing, absolutely just kind of like whenever I hear it, I'm like I get a boost of serotonin, you know, I get that kind of like good feel inside, because I'm just doing the things that are me. I'm doing the kind of like, okay, this is the thing that I wanted to do, and this is the thing that I'm like doing. And like when I knock down, I do my kick, crowd react to that. I go on, I give the knee up on the top, and the crowd just go, woo! Off of the big knee. And then I pull them in, I go for the brain buster, and you can just see my eyes near enough pop out of my head, because I've always wanted to scream brain buster.
Brain buster.
I think like if I wish I was a comedy wrestler, because I'd love to do the spot of like Ebersan where he goes brain buster and goes up for it, but then gets brain busted himself. But I go for a brain buster, I get knocked down, I do the classic like down into the ropes, and then come back with the big line. And the fact that everyone like you hear the crowd go down and then come back up when I hit the clothesline, that just like that's probably like the moment that like as you can see, I'm a bit more animated speaking about it right now, that I'm like, I words can't describe how kind of like that's the moment that's kind of like cool. I need to have this again.
Yeah.
Give me some of that good.
No, definitely. So with like some of your goals, again, I want to go back to Wrestle Island, and it seems from your interactions on Twitter that is something you would want to do, being part of their Tell Island prospects, 10 new prospects. It's 2 teams. So if I'm gonna probably crop this bit out and post it on Twitter as well. So what message you got for Wrestle Island, and why should you be one of these prospects, just to put you on the spot?
Well, I think the message isn't actually for Wrestle Island. It's for the person who's holding that Wrestle Island trophy. Because I don't know if you can see my mantelpiece, but I have a lot of palm tree.
We're blurred out.
Oh, damn. I don't know if you
Continue.
can see my mantelpiece, but I have a lot of palm tree based metallics that I need to add to my collection. And that guy Harry right now, he's holding that trophy, and the winner of this prospect tournament would get a shot at that trophy. Now, I don't care how many arm bars I have to put on, how many people I need to choke out, how many jaws I need to break, or let's just say, how many times I need to give someone a low blow behind the referee's back, but I've got my sights set on that trophy. Now it's kind of up to anyone to get in my way and see what happens. Bruh. That's a bruh moment right there.
Big talk from the shooter, Ian Skinner.
Pew pew. Oh, that's hot. That's hot. Oh.
Now, hopefully, man, that will be something that will come off it. But what other goals have you got in professional wrestling? Like, your love for Japan. You see an Akira in All Japan. You've got Gabriel Kidd in New Japan. Like, what are your goals? Is Japan somewhere you'd love to go train?
I would absolutely love to go train in Japan. I think I'd need to. I don't know if it's something that I'd need to adjust to upon going over there, or something I need to get involved with like prior to going over there. But the 4 days that I spent training with Atsushi Aoki, Aoki-san, just he drove my body to an entirely different level. It was to the point in which like forward rolls are like the most like basic of things you would do as kind of like a warm up. On day 3, I was not able to forward roll because my core was in such disarray from the warm ups and the training. But I learned so much from the wrestling, which was very much kind of like cool. You've got the physical section and you've got the wrestling section, and like right now, Akira is training with Tajiri, and I think what would be even sweeter than being able to train with the guy that I watched wrestle in a Santa outfit all those years ago. Tajiri is definitely one of the people on my bucket list, but as well, I would be over the moon to train with Shibata or Tanahashi or Tenzan or like Kojima over in New Japan. That would be very much kind of like an over the moon kind of experience. I think I know. I've seen their kind of like their open calls that they've done. I don't think I'm in the market for Japan. They are looking for guys. They're looking for like guys of certain stature, certain weight, and certain height that I wouldn't say I slightly fall under. I say that I am very much underneath it. I'd say if I was 2 men in a coat, maybe I could trick people, but I think that'd make sit-ups a lot easier because all I'd have to do is kind of like bend. Anyway, mechanics out of the way. I'd love to get those opportunities, but as well, I'd love to train over in WXW because they have a very similar like physical kind of like discipline behind them, in which I know that when Walter was the head trainer, that he's like his training is like all Japan based. He like was trained under Kabashi, and he's like trained with Sekimoto. So he's got that mentality. So I believe WXW is like maybe even the closest thing we could get to Japan right now. But I want to travel anywhere I can and learn the different styles that everyone learns. I know American wrestling has such a it's very different. Like training with Mike Bailey, it's like very different. Chick Cullen, he's recently opened up he's been part of a place in Calgary, which is very much kind of like what the dungeon could be or what the dungeon is now. Because Chick Cullen is from Sterling, but he helped train a lot of the people in the dungeon himself as well. So I want to learn so much. I want to learn every style. I want to be like Kota Ibushi, in which I'm like, WWE can wait right now. I want to learn British wrestling. So I just want to learn as much as I can. I want to travel as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, obviously with NXT UK, It's been on somewhat of a hiatus because of the COVID pandemic. However, I do believe there will be recording in the next week or two, from what I've heard, and it seems like Amel, she's over here and she's having to do isolation. So I'm guessing she's come over to isolate, so then she'll be able to record, or she's been here and then she's isolated back home. NXT UK, is that if you got the offer of being a young lion in New Japan or being part of the Performance Centre in NXT UK, what would you go with?
I'd say taking it all back down to the scraps as a young lion in New Japan or All Japan or would make me a better product or something a bit more value, a bit more worth later on in my career than if I was like taken into the Performance Center. I mean, you've seen that happen with like a lot of talents, AJ Styles, Finn Balor, the Good Brothers. Like they've built themselves in this other company, Kushida, another one. Yeah. Built themselves in this other company, and that's where they've gained their value. And now they're learning the American, the WWE style. Yeah. I say that there's not many stories of the other way about it. You do have Juice Robinson, where he was like NXT, Indies, NXT, and then he went back to a young lion and started in Japan. So I think there's maybe more value in that process rather than that process. But who knows? I think it all depends on the actual person themselves. But I think myself, it'd be a dream to be in that Tokyo Dome, seconding like the ace of the company, just by giving him a towel, giving him like some of that ice. Suzuki comes out, punches me,
I'm just picturing you getting punched by Suzuki, just smiling as we're like Kazanina.
Yeah. Oh, I'd be like under my breath, like, wasn't me. Don't.
Suzuki is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, I think we could probably just do an whole podcast just talking different independent wrestling and different wrestling scenes. But is there anybody you're wanting to face, just like kind of wrap things up for your goal? Let's say 2021, because 2020's been a write-off. Like, who is it that you're wanting to face? And what are your immediate goals? So
immediate goals, as it didn't happen in 2020, I'd love to get down to a couple of promotions in England. I'm English myself, so it's funny because like most times the Scottish wrestling would come down and it's like, oh, I'm Scottish, I'm evil, I hate the English. But I'm English myself, so I'm just come down as the Scottish guy. There's so many different companies, FTW, Wrestle Island, Wrestle Carnival. I'm excited to see, what they've got going on.
What's your thought? I know you quoted that. I want to jump in. What was your thoughts on the Ringmasters announcement? Because you said it was very much like bringing your Ring of Honor Pure vibes.
Yeah, no, I love the Ring of Honor Pure rules, because I think like as a kid when I was watching that, I was like, oh, wrestling's got some more rules. It felt like a gimmick match to me, like a Hell in a Cell, and that's where I'd see all these guys like Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, Nigel McGuinness, Austin Aries, Samoa Joe. That's where I'd see them do their kind of like their best and more physical work.
Yeah.
But I think it's even better the fact that they've kind of like flipped the concept on its head and just gone, well, it's going to be an all females Ringmasters, and I'm like, okay, that is okay, because I think it's just like, it's not a bait and switch, it's not a misdirection, but it's kind of like, hey, there's a lot of like lasses out there who can do incredible work, and I think some of them never get the opportunity to do that because they're usually given the role of this is the token women's match, let's do the token women things. But no, because they can do more than that, definitely. And I think this opportunity will give them like the chance to show like, yeah, cool, let's do the rope break rules. Let's do like the Sarah Del Rey in like the Joshi Pro matches.
Yeah.
Where it's like, like it's just boom, 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 boom. Because Joshi wrestling is like such a physical style that no one seems to acknowledge.
It's brutal. It is
But
brutal.
I think that is it Gaia Girls? Gaia Girls
Yeah.
is a documentary where they're teaching them how to drop kick, and they're like, no, harder. If you don't knock me off my feet, it's not a drop kick. Harder. I think like the Joshi wrestlers had a lot harder training than I had in those 4 days with Aoki-san. But yeah, no, the Ringmasters is definitely going to be interesting. And like, even if I'm not there, I'll definitely be trying to find an on-demand or like a fan cam video of it just to get like, okay, what do I need to prepare in preparation for a Ringmaster style match?
No, definitely. So, what other goals have you got?
So one opponent that I've like had that he's been in my books since kind of like, so I train with him. So it's very much kind of like this wrestle friends. We're all pals here. I'd love to put everyone over in the school that I could, but this one person, I vibe with him so well. A guy called Daz Black, and if you guys have not seen him, I'd recommend you seek him out. He had an amazing match with Craig Anthony at ICW that I think the last show before everything got locked down. Daz Black is an incredible talent, only recently just turned 18. Absolutely yoked, might be on the gas, I'm not too sure. He's natural as anything. He dedicates his body and a lot of his like time thinking to wrestling. He's been doing it since he's 12. Incredible. I'd love to, like, I could retire after having a match with him because I'm like, cool, I've done it. I've won. I've completed wrestling. Guys, finish wrestling. Wrestling's done. We've just done it. We've just done wrestling. You guys can stop. That's one of my like one matches. I'd love to also have a Joe Nelson or Lycos 2, depending on like which kind of show's on, because he seems like one of those kind of like Logan Smiths or Daz Blacks, where he's been around it since he was so young, but he's picked up his own little niche. And I think I say there'd be a fun little play around in the fact that he's Lycos 2, because one of the things that I purchased, I think just after lockdown started or in the midst of lockdown, was a set of kick pads from Lycos, because I'm like, those kick pads are amazing.
Yeah.
Those can't go to waste. I want to use them. So now I've got a pair of Lycos kick pads. He's got the Lycos mat. Maybe, I'm like, he's like Lycos 2 and I'm Lycos Black, like classic Tiger Mask style.
I like it. So Ian, no, thank you for coming on the show. Like, obviously, for those of you still tuned in, make sure you check out the upcoming D&DUB, where myself and Ian will speak about Dungeons and Dragons. But I need to get a group of people chanting that. It can be the intro where it just starts getting louder. It's like D&DUB, 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 and keep going. Yep. So yeah, Dungeons and Wrestling. We're going to be speaking about obviously D&D, and I'm going to be doing a wrestling twist. And Ian asked kind of like what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to be putting him on the spot like I've throughout this interview, I guess. So yeah.
Well, I'm an improv master, so get ready. Oh, I'm like Johnny Sane. Oh,
I know. Like when I did that Wrestle Carnival, the Wrestle Island, promo, you just went straight off on it. I was like, improv. Yep, easy for him. Does improv. But where can they all find you?
So the best place to find me is on Twitter or Instagram at Ian Skinner PW. The PW stands for Private Washing Machine. It doesn't. It stands for Pro Wrestling, of course. Right now, you can find, I think my Instagram is just pictures of me being out and about with cans of Monster, being like, hey, look at that scenery. Isn't that mad?
I'm more of a Red Bull person.
See, I used to be Red Bull, but I think the 0 calories on this guy gives it a bit of flavor. But every now and then I can crush a Red Bull. Oof. My Twitter is a lot of kind of like, there's a different promotion. There's a funny tweet. There's Breonna Taylor's still not been, like, the people who killed Breonna Taylor still not been arrested. get them arrested, and then a bit of Japanese wrestling, and then sometimes maybe a funny meme. Trying to think of the last funny tweet I put up, because I'm sure I did tweet something just like, I think I was asking why Gromit was trending. Yeah, Gromit was trending last night. I have no idea why.
Whilst we're on it, I am literally going to just search into Twitter Gromit to see why.
I think it's something to do with mugs. I think all the Gromit mugs on Amazon were sold out. It's funny because I looked at the trending page, I looked at the hashtag, and I got no more information apart from people saying, why is Gromit trending?
I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, on that note, guys, that's been the interview with the shooter Ian Skinner. Make sure you tune in for the first ever episode of D&DUB, Dungeons and Wrestling. Again, you can find me at Kurt Johansson Show. I need to make sure it is the correct one because I've just gone through a rebrand. It was Kurt's Angle Pod. Now I've changed all the Twitter handles.
I love a pun.
Yeah. Well, Kurt Angle follows me now because of that pun. So that was quite cool. Just to put that one out there. But yeah, so it's now the Kurt Johansson Show. So Kurt Johansson Show. On Facebook and Instagram now as well, which is new. So just make sure you give us a follow on there. If you've liked this, hit like, hit subscribe. And speaking of Wrestle Carnival, I will be speaking to their new commentary team in James R. Kennedy and Dave Bradshaw, and that will be my first official interview for Wrestle Carnival, which will be on their YouTube page. So make sure you follow Wrestle Carnival. And again, I will be doing some more great interviews. If this one's already out, make sure you check out my interview with El Messias, the AAA legend, and coming soon, my interview with Mil Muertes, and all my work coming up with Fierce Females, working with Aisha Raymond to produce the Fierce Females Focus Show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.